Hello there, Atheist Junior here, your friend and humble narrator, and in today's video I'm going to be looking at 3 videos from the Young Earth Creationist channel, A Bit of Orange. Now, if you guys are familiar at all with Professor Stick or Vice Rhino, they've done some back and forth video series with A Bit of Orange, and Professor Stick in particular did a video where A Bit of Orange responded to it, and he was asking for examples of, I think, beneficial mutations, and he responded, Orange in his video. Professor Stick had given, I think, 2 examples, and A Bit of Orange just completely left out one of the examples, and then was like, it was just super dishonest, and you're gonna see that in this video. So A Bit of Orange, he has this format where he's kind of like an animated character, and he has the Berkeley mascot reading the Understanding Evolution website, Evolution 101, in this super annoying voice. Um, it's really grating, but there's not much I can do about that, so we'll just have to live with it. But yeah, let's get started.
Just remember the stuff presented by this creepy bear is from the Evolution 101 website, written by the Understanding Evolution team. Commentary by Rent-A-Friend 2000. That's me!
Adaptation. An adaptation is a feature that is common in a population because it provides some improved function. Adaptations are well fitted to their function and are produced by natural selection.
Whoa. You just said produced. Read that line again.
No, that's what it says.
No, that's not what it says. Okay, I'm going to be reading the actual stuff that it says on the website on these different articles to you. So I'm gonna put the links to these articles in the description so you can check for yourself. But he changes what the actual articles say in his videos. I guess that's why he didn't link any of them in the description of his videos. But the first 2 sentences on the adaptation article, it says, an adaptation is a feature that arose and was favored by natural selection for its current function. Adaptations help an organism survive and or reproduce in its current environment. So it didn't say produced, unless it says it later in the article, but it didn't say that the way that he's presenting it.
It says produced?
Yeah, produced by natural selection.
You're kidding me.
No, look.
Huh. Okay.
Adaptations are well fitted to their function and are produced by natural selection.
It's like beating a dead horse, but here I go again. Natural selection cannot produce anything. All it can do is select or choose from what's already there. Otherwise, we'd call it natural production. This team of PhDs should know better than to claim that anything gets produced by natural selection.
Well, they didn't, so.
Because it simply isn't true. But don't take my word for it. Here's a team of PhDs which say exactly what I'm saying.
However, natural selection and genetic drift cannot operate unless there is genetic variation. Natural selection cannot try to supply what an organism needs. Natural selection just selects among whatever variation exists in the population.
And again, we have quotes that stop and start without showing the entire quote.
What? The Understanding Evolution team from Part 9 and Part 14b respectively. What the what? In order to discredit the Evolution 101 website, all I have to do is go to the Evolution 101 website?
And change what they actually said in your video and just basically lie, yeah.
I don't want to go tossing around words like incompetence or deception or liar pants on fire, but I can't think of another way to put it. Of course they know better. It doesn't take a team of PhDs to know that you can't add by subtracting, but apparently it takes a PhD to believe that you can. Look at their example of natural selection in the previous section. Birds eat the green beetles and leave alone the brown ones until there are no more green beetles. What's left? Brown ones. Hey, you gotta try one. They're delish. Did the birds eating the green ones produce the brown ones? No, it only removed the green ones.
Okay, but why? First of all, you're a liar. But why did it remove the green ones? Well, in this example, the background that the beetles are on is brown, like soil, I guess. And so the idea is that you have a brown background, and then you have a population of beetles where some of them are green and some of them are brown. The ones who are brown are more likely to camouflage with their environment and not get seen by the bird and then eaten. So they're more likely to survive long enough to be able to reproduce and bring their genes to the next generation. And that's natural selection. It's a very simple example. But he's going to harp on this. Oh, they said that natural selection produces adaptations for the whole video, but it never says that in the article.
To say adaptations are produced by natural selection is again either ignorant or deceptive. To say that species originate by means of natural selection is 180 degrees wrong. Once again, Uncle Chuck needs a new title for his book, and a new premise for his book, and a completely different conclusion. On the other hand, maybe I'll get a bag of M&Ms and eat all the green ones, and then claim I produced the red ones by selecting out the green ones. Would I get paid royalties for that? Either way, I get to eat some chocolate, so I'm going to try it. Anywho, since their entire premise is bunk, I'll therefore skip the list of examples they provide of alleged adaptations.
Wow. Okay, so you're going to say that their premise, which you misrepresented, is bunk. And so that means you get to skip all of the examples that back up their argument. That's very convenient for you.
So what's not an adaptation? The answer, a lot of things. One example is vestigial structures. A vestigial structure is a feature that was an adaptation for the organism's ancestor.
You know what, just to dunk on this guy, I'm going to read the examples that they gave. So it says, mimicry of leaves by insects is an adaptation for evading predators. The example is a leaf katydid from Costa Rica. And if you've seen those, they look almost identical to leaves. It's pretty crazy. The creosote bush is a desert-dwelling plant that produces toxins that prevent other plants from growing nearby, thus reducing competition for nutrients and water. And the third example is echolocation in bats is an adaptation for catching insects.
But that evolved to be non-functional because the organism's environment changed.
Evolved to be non-functional. How's that for newspeak? Now something formerly useful, becoming useless, is evolution. Oh, these guys could do spin for the White House and report how great the economy has become since so many persons formerly burdened with employment have been promoted to a home-based, unscheduled, non-profit position. I miss Trump. How do we know something is best?
Did he say I miss Trump? Wow. Why? What do you miss about him? This guy loves to just insert his garbage political hot takes in these videos, and they have nothing to do with the subject. You'll see more of this. Unbelievable.
Vestigial? First, we assume evolution is true. Then we assume the organ or structure in question has no purpose now. Then we assume it had a purpose in the evolutionary past and has, quote, evolved to be non-functional. Then some idiot creationist comes along and suggests the structure has a function, like the appendix or the spleen or the tonsils, and dang it, he's right. So we take those off of the list of vestigial items and keep on believing in evolution. Let me add a quote which kind of tweaks me off.
Okay, for vestigial structures, this is a classic misrepresentation by creationists. Kent Hovind does this all the time. They say that the definition of a vestigial structure is that it's something you don't need anymore. But that's not true. It's a structure that a common ancestor had where the descendant has that structure, but it has a different function or it's lost its function. So it can have a different function, like the shrunken hip bones of a whale. That doesn't mean they have no purpose. So saying this structure has no purpose, that means it's people say that this structure is vestigial because it has no purpose, but actually it can do this thing. It has this purpose, so it's not vestigial. That's not a good argument, because all it means is that the structure has changed its function from what it was in a common ancestor. In the common ancestor of whales, like Pakicetus, they had legs because they could walk on land. Those same bones are shrunken in modern whales, and they're used to help reproduction. Just go watch any Kent Hovind video about whales. He'll tell you all about it. So it's a changed function. This is such an annoying argument.
My whole life I was told tonsils and the appendix are vestigial and prove we evolved from monkeys, which I suppose had a functioning appendix or something. They never actually fill in that gap for us. These examples are still brought up as proof for evolution in debates, yet look at the date on this quote.
For the last 2,000 years, doctors have puzzled over the function of the thymus gland. Modern physicians came to regard it, like the appendix, as a useless vestigial organ, which had lost its original purpose if indeed it had ever had one. In the last few years, however, men have proved that far from being useless, the thymus is really the master gland that regulates the intricate immunity system which protects us against infectious diseases. Recent experiments have led researchers to believe that the appendix, tonsils, and adenoids may also figure in the antibody responses.
Yep, that's from the useless gland that guards our health in Reader's Digest, November of 1966. 1966! That's more than a decade before I was born! But wait, look at the date on this one.
Wow. Why do creationists think that Reader's Digest is a good source? And it's like, yeah, your sources are really old because you're a creationist. That doesn't make your argument more powerful. It makes it weaker.
There is no longer any justification for regarding the veriform appendix as a vestigial structure.
That's from William Strauss's Quarterly Review of Biology from 1947. 1947! This is only 2 years after World War II, right? It's not just me here, is it? Did you hear this in high school? Because my textbook left this out and taught the exact opposite. Heck, check out the apparent lack of enlightenment from a 2010 National Geographic article.
The appendix, a narrow tube that hangs off one end of the colon, is probably the most famous junk organ, but it's turned out to be important even today, in certain circumstances.
I like how this guy has trashed National Geographic in other videos of his, saying that they're not an accurate source, they're not a good source of scientific information. And then in this video, he's citing them. I love how creationists do that.
Yeah, that's from Vestigial Organs Not So Useless After All, Studies Find, October 2010. Not so useless after all. How about that? It only took National Geographic 63 years to catch up with the Quarterly Review of Biology. High school textbooks may follow any decade now.
Fish species that live in completely dark caves have vestigial, non-functional eyes. When their sighted ancestors ended up living in caves, there was no longer any natural selection that maintained the function of the fish's eyes. So fish with better sight no longer outcompeted fish with worse sight. Today these fish still have eyes, but they are not functional and are not an adaptation. They are just the byproducts of the fish's evolutionary history.
This is a great example of something which could actually be argued to be vestigial. If you remove the claim that this has anything to do with evolution,
Of course.
then I agree with this paragraph. It's an example of a non-functional organ which was previously functional and is a kind of change we witnessed within a few generations, thus making it observational-based science. Like I said before, they give just enough examples of real things to make it seem like there's actual science going on. But there's no bait and switch without the bait. The problem is, this is still a loss. These fish have lost the use of their eyes. In fact, they still retain the information it took to make the eyes, but those genes are switched off.
No, they didn't. These are cave fish who live in complete darkness. They didn't have any use for their eyes in the first place. So it's beneficial. It's an adaptation because when cave fish that live in complete darkness anyway have eyes, then there's a possibility that they could like run into a sharp edge of the wall and poke out their eye and get an infection, and then they die from it. So it's actually beneficial and an adaptation for them to not have eyes because they don't need them. And so what, even if it is a loss, so what? This idea that if something is a loss of genetic information, that means it's not evolution. But every mutation is new genetic information because instead of this letter, there's this other letter in the CATG sequences. So that's new information. Every mutation is new information. So I am so tired of hearing this argument about, oh, this is a loss, because that's always the get out of jail free card for creationists. Because look at this. He himself admits, even by his crappy standards, this is a perfect example of evolution. But he says, oh, well, it's a loss. So nope, try again. Okay.
There are lots of examples of living things with genes that do not get used. When the conditions are right, the genes can get switched back on. This is why pasty, colorless Europeans get tan when exposed to sunlight. The gene that produces melanin gets kicked on when they are exposed to lots of sun. This is not evidence of evolution, as evolution requires a gain of genetic information.
Says who? And besides, okay, even if we make that requirement, every mutation is a gain of genetic information.
Turning genes off is not evolution any more than parking your car makes you Henry Ford. Once again, the way
What? What? Turning off a gene is not evolution any more than parking your car makes you Henry Ford.
cave-dwelling creatures tend to adapt to total darkness by switching off the genes is fascinating, but not an inch closer to supporting evolution as fact. It is actually an example of the exact opposite of what this website is supposed to prove. Discovering that they no longer have functional eyes tells us nothing about where the functional eyes had come from in the first place.
There is no opposite of evolution. There is only more adapted or less adapted. So populations of animals are always evolving. The ones that become more adapted because of mutations and traits that they get, those are going to get selected for. The ones that stay or become less adapted, those are less likely to get selected for than animals that gain adaptations because of beneficial mutations that give them new traits that allow them to survive long enough to reproduce and pass on their genes. So there's no opposite of evolution.
And that is the claim they're making about evolution. If we all work together to spread the word, I think we can educate even the Understanding Evolution team and National Geographic and make.
So you're going to educate a bunch of PhD scientists that wrote these articles? Okay, this guy claims he's a science teacher, by the way. Of course he does, right?
Maybe, just maybe, they might change their tune. All they need is the truth. And 50 or 60 years. Join me next time for more. Whee!
And then the hashtag at the end. Isn't that great? Okay, I'm going to start the next video real quick.
Just remember, the stuff presented by this creepy bear is from the Evolution 101 website, written by the Understanding Evolution team. Commentary by Rent-A-Friend 2000. That's me!
Coevolution. The term coevolution is used to describe cases where two or more species reciprocally affect each other's evolution. So, for example, an evolutionary change in the morphology of a plant might affect the morphology of an herbivore that eats the plant, which in turn might affect the evolution of the plant, which might affect the evolution of the herbivore, which might affect the evolution of the plant, which might affect the evolution of the herbivore, which might affect the evolution of the plant.
This would almost make sense if there was reason to believe evolution was happening in the first place. So far, we have seen none, so providing a scenario where you get two for the price of one, aka the natural selection BOGO, is a fun jog on the old mental treadmill, but still makes stops only in the land of make-believe.
Yeah, you're very good at mental gymnastics.
For all of this to matter to the overall scheme of evolution, they need a mechanism by which information is added to the genomes of both species, making it at least twice as unlikely to happen by mutations. If you tear pages out of the Green Eggs and Ham and Peter Rabbit, you will not end up with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. You need some method of adding huge amounts of information, which, in this case, now relates to the information being added to another volume. Or,
Well, that would still be a better book than the Bible, because it wouldn't promote slavery.
if I may use some technical jargon, you need twice as many miracles.
Coevolution is likely to happen when different species have close ecological interactions with one another. These ecological relationships include predator-prey and parasite-host, competitive species, mutualistic species. Plants and insects represent a classic case of coevolution, one that is often but not always mutualistic. Many plants and their pollinators are so reliant on one another, and their relationships are so exclusive, that biologists have good reason to think that the match between the two is the result of a coevolutionary process.
Okay, so this guy changed the text from the article, and I have no idea why, because it basically says the exact same thing. So on the actual article, it says many cases of coevolution can be found between plants and insects. For example, plants and their pollinators are so reliant on one another, and their relationships are sometimes so exclusive that biologists have good reason to think that matches between the two are the result of a coevolutionary process. So I have no idea why you would change what the text of the article says and just rephrase it. I don't know.
Let me translate. These plants and insects need each other to survive, almost as if they were designed to work together as two parts of a system, like a lock and a key.
They need each other to survive now. That doesn't mean that they always needed each other to survive. And that doesn't mean that they were created as a beneficial system or a symbiotic system. That's an ad hoc explanation after the fact that you're applying to the evidence. You're not seeing the evidence and then getting your conclusion from it. You've started with your preconceived evidence. You've started with your conclusion already, with what you want to be true. And now you're twisting the evidence to match what you already wanted to be true, which is the Bible.
But since a lock and key imply a locksmith, we reject that out of hand because we believe in evolution. Somehow a plant and an insect, which need each other for survival, were naturally selected to survive over the plants and insects, which were not so dependent. Yes, you heard me. On this view, natural selection rewards codependence over adaptability and independence. This is very much how sales of the DVD remote, which requires you to have a TV remote, a stereo remote, and a CD changer remote, eclipsed sales of the universal remote, which contains all of those functions. Oh, wait. No, it didn't, because that would be inexplicably stupid.
But we can see
Yeah, that example just didn't make sense to me.
exclusive matches between plants and insects, even when pollination is not involved. Some Central American acacia species have hollow thorns and pores at the base of their leaves that secrete nectar. These hollow thorns are the exclusive nest site of some species of ant that drink the nectar. But the ants are not just taking advantage of the plant, they also defend their acacia plant against herbivores. This system is probably the product of coevolution. The plants would not have evolved hollow thorns or nectar pores unless their evolution had been affected by the ants, and the ants would not have evolved herbivore defense behaviors unless their evolution had been affected by the plants.
Okay, you point out the fact that it says probably, but if it stated it outright, you would just say, "Oh, well, they think they're just stating this as if it's a fact, as if there's evidence for evolution. I can't believe it." You know? So it's like it's a no-win scenario for these people. But to me, that makes total sense.
So they each developed structures and behaviors, which were beneficial because of the structures and behaviors the other one was going to evolve in the future?
No, that's not what it said at all.
So now evolution is planning ahead? Now the genetic information in both organisms has to accidentally increase so as to result in the structures and behaviors which will be beneficial when the other makes changes in the future. Remember when they said this?
Natural selection is the simple result of variation, differential reproduction, and heredity. It is mindless and mechanistic. It has no goals. It's not striving to produce progress or a balanced ecosystem.
Since then, evolution has figured out some way to plan ahead and work toward mutually beneficial goals. How nice. It's good to see little evolution applying himself. And now, a metaphor. You walk into my fish store to buy some salmon, and you see that half of my store is equipped to sell and repair watches. Why did you combine your fish store with a watch repair shop? I used to sell only fish, I reply, but I knew my customers would also come here to have their watches repaired, because only I carry this particular kind of battery. I hold up the rare battery. Why would they buy watches with a battery so rare they had to bring their watches to a fish mart to be repaired, you ask? Because they knew I was going to start carrying this battery. But why did you start offering watch repair services and carrying that battery if no one yet owned a watch that needed it? Because I knew that if I spend time and money to have a watch repair business here and offered that battery, they would change their habit of taking their watches elsewhere and start buying watches which need this rare battery, and then they'd bring them to my fish mart. And look, now half of my business is watch repair. What if people stop wearing watches? Or if they buy more reliable watches that don't need such a rare battery? Well, I reply soberly, I'd quickly go out of business. Thank you. Join me next time for more. Woohoo!
Why would that cause you to go out of business if you also had the fish mart? That was a really dumb example. Okay, I'm going to start the next video.
Just remember the stuff presented by this creepy bear is from the Evolution 101 website, written by the Understanding Evolution team. Commentary by Rent-A-Friend 2000. That's me!
Sexual selection. It's clear why sexual selection is so powerful when you consider what happens to the genes of an individual who lives to a ripe old age but never got to mate. No offspring means no genes in the next generation, which means that all of those genes for living to a ripe old age don't get passed on to anyone. That individual's fitness is 0.
Non-smoker, jogs daily, runs marathons until he's 102, but if he has no kids, fitness is 0. Lazy, Mick-addicted, 800-pound alcoholic who has 16 kids with different daddies and dies at 27, Super Finn!
Okay, that just seemed like a really mean-spirited joke for no real reason. I don't know. Trump supporters, everyone.
Maybe we need a different word. Calling that fit seems a tad misleading. It also conjures up horrible ideas about what a fitness program is. I don't know what it would be, but I suspect we should make it illegal.
Artificial selection. Long before Darwin and Wallace, farmers and breeders were using the idea of selection to cause major changes in the features of their plants and animals over the course of decades.
Yeah, so that's not what this article says. It says, long before Darwin and Wallace, people were using selection to change the features of plants and animals. It never mentions anything about doing it over the course of decades. So I don't know why he's like lying about this.
Farmers and breeders allowed only the plants and animals with desirable characteristics to reproduce, causing the evolution of farm stock. This process is called artificial selection, because people, instead of nature, select which organisms get to reproduce.
First of all,
Okay, is he like slipping in a Mexican accent here? Like, what is going on with this weird voice? I can't handle it.
why are we artificial? Shouldn't this be called intelligent selection? Artificial selection is what it should be called if robots did this.
It's artificial because it's not done by nature. You know how sometimes foods have natural flavorings versus artificial flavorings? You know, like lime juice versus a chemical that's meant to taste like lime that they put in Mountain Dew? It's the same thing. Or is this just a dumb joke? I don't want to be debunking jokes, but this guy's sense of humor is really lame. Like, conservatives are not funny. They're just not.
This fails to understand what farmers are actually doing. They are selecting traits so that the next generation has those pre-existing traits and not others. This means a net loss of genetic information.
Why? All mutations are new information. So they're selecting traits that came about because of random mutations. So you have random mutations, but the selection process that selects those traits from those mutations is not random because it's selecting the traits that are most advantageous for that creature or population of animals to adapt to their environment and live long enough to reproduce.
No new information has been gained. This is like a magician tossing out all of the black cards. He's more likely to get the red ace he wants, but he hasn't made any new cards. If he tosses out all the black cards, he may get the red ace, but he'll never get the Archduke of Hearts. Artificial selection is thinning the deck, or sometimes shuffling the deck, but it isn't adding to the deck. What this proves is how much genetic information existed in the naturally occurring kinds, so that breeders could make 400 varieties of dog from the
The naturally occurring kinds? Are you serious?
starting wolf kind. The breeding potential of the average poodle is arguably less.
As shown below, farmers have cultivated numerous popular crops from the wild mustard by artificially selecting for certain attributes. These common vegetables were cultivated from forms of wild mustard. This is evolution through artificial selection.
This is evolution. Just read the subtitles on this picture. Sterility, suppression, and suppression.
I like how you only pointed to the three on the left, but you didn't mention how the ones on the right say enlargement of leaves or selection for enhancement of lateral meristem. This guy, I mean, that's just cherry picking or broccoli picking.
How is can't do what it used to supposed to be evolution? Isn't there another word for that? Like,
Selection for enlargement of leaves. So it was able to grow leaves before. Now it's able to grow bigger leaves. But you didn't point to that example, of course.
broken? Consider the facts. We were able to produce a wide range of vegetables by selecting certain traits from a wild plant. This means the traits we selected were already there. I don't want to sound all wacky fundamentalist, but a farmer cannot select something which does not exist. In order to be selected, it must be there. Thus, if it is selected by man or nature, that means it was there already. Thus, the act of selecting is not the mechanism which created it. If I can put a point on it, natural selection cannot be the origin of the species. The species has to already be there in order for nature to select it.
No. Okay. Yeah, like I said, the traits were already there, but they came about by mutations. So I'm going to read this abstract from a paper called Understanding Natural Selection, Essential Concepts and Common Misconceptions, which this guy could probably stand to read. So it says, natural selection is one of the central mechanisms of evolutionary change and is the process responsible for the evolution of adaptive features. Without a working knowledge of natural selection, it is impossible to understand how or why living things have come to exhibit their diversity and complexity. An understanding of natural selection also is becoming increasingly relevant in practical contexts, including medicine, agriculture, and resource management. Unfortunately, studies indicate that natural selection is generally very poorly understood, even among many individuals with post-secondary biological education. This paper provides an overview of the basic process of natural selection, discusses the extent and possible causes of misunderstandings of the process, and presents a review of the most common misconceptions that must be corrected before a functional understanding of natural selection and adaptive evolution can be achieved. And I'm just going to read a couple more sentences here from the introduction. It says, natural selection is a non-random difference in reproductive output among replicating entities, often due indirectly to differences in survival in a particular environment, leading to an increase in the proportion of beneficial, heritable characteristics within a population from one generation to the next.
Sorry, Uncle Chuck, looks like your book needs a new title. And conclusion. And premise. And illustrations. Your book sucks, Chuck. What was I saying?
Your YouTube channel sucks. That's probably why your channel is still at like 300 subscribers, even though it's been around for years before I created my channel, and I have 3,000 subscribers.
Through natural selection, each generation has less genetic information than the previous one, just as a straight flush or a full house each have fewer cards than the original deck. This may be how you turn wild mustard into domestic cabbage, but it's not how you turn bacteria into wild mustard. Again, this is evolution in the same manner that our government is spending its way out of debt. If I can highlight this point, in both natural and artificial selection, the end result is less genetic information than previously existed. Very simply then, when we look back in time, we see more genetic information and potential diversity than we do now.
Can you demonstrate that? Oh, and it looks like we have our first super chat from Stacy C for $20. Thank you, Stacy. It says, I've missed a lot lately. Sad face emoji. Just wanted to thank you for working so damn hard on the channel. Kissy face. Thank you, Stacy. I have been trying to put out a lot of content this month, so I hope you guys have been enjoying it. Go and watch the Professor Dave interview if you haven't. And then the Jeannie Scott video has been getting a lot of views, which I'm really happy about. So I'm really glad that you guys seem to enjoy that video, because I really enjoyed editing it. I thought it came out to be really funny.
This is the exact opposite of what we would expect to see if evolution were true, but it is exactly what we would expect to see if all living things were intelligently created by God according to their kind, with the expectation that they would be fruitful and multiply. To put a finer point on it, natural and artificial selection are both great evidence to support God's act of creation as described in Genesis, and great evidence against Darwinian evolution.
Oh, you. Okay. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Oh. Boy, that has been a funny live stream so far, hasn't it? But I bet you're asking yourself as a viewer, how can I support independent YouTube content like this? And why should I? Well, I make well-researched videos that contain original comedy, and you'll be supporting atheist activism. Now, follow-up question. What benefits will you get if you pledge to my Patreon? Well, you'll get early access to videos, Patreon-exclusive videos, Patreon-exclusive live streams where I do one-on-one live streams with people. If you want, it's optional, no pressure. Behind-the-scenes content, channel updates so you know what I'm working on and what's going on with the channel, and you get to vote in polls on what you think the next video should be. Doesn't that sound nice? Don't you think? Well, I sure hope that you'll consider visiting patreon.com/atheistjunior and pledging as little as $1 per month to support me. but I've taken enough of your time. Let's get back to the live stream, shall we? Okay. Well, we're almost done. So I know you guys have been tolerating this guy's terrible content and the annoying voice, so we're almost done, I promise.
The Understanding Evolution team seems to have missed that fact.
Oh, and okay, we have another super chat for $20 from Dave Dalafiore. It says, "Thanks, Stacy." Yes, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Stacy. I appreciate the support so much. Seriously. Thank you.
Pointed out to them, but I'm pretty sure they just have a fit. A fit, right? Get it? I know. I came up with that. That was me. What was I saying? Oh, that's it. All right, join me next time for more. Whee!
Hashtag Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you, but everybody else thinks you're an asshole. Okay. So, that's the end of the video. I know this one was a little bit shorter, but a bit of orange. His videos are not very long, but they are packed with dishonest misinformation, just like any other creationist channel. So, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We are very close to hitting 4,000 subscribers on this channel. I can't, honestly, I can't believe it. It's crazy to me, you know? The growth of this channel has just been awesome. So I'm very happy to see that. Leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of the video. And consider supporting me on Patreon if you'd like to support content like this. I've really been trying to put out a lot of content for you guys this month. And I want to continue doing that. And donations and super chats really help me get equipment that will help increase the production value of the videos. And it helps me not be reliant on ad revenue because YouTube likes to put my videos on limited ads every time that they go live. So I'm always missing out on that window of ad revenue. I know you guys don't care about that stuff, but yeah, thank you guys so much, and I'll just see you in the next video. Peace. Thanks for watching.